This video attempts to make sense of Hamas's unprecedented attack on Israel on Saturday, October 7, 2023, by firing more than 2,200 rockets and assault on the ground and by air. Hello friends, this is Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini, where I provide unique analysis of world events based on the unmasked truth that after surrender, Germany continued World War II clandestinely and became a killing machine. I also provide true news that you will find nowhere else. Now, Hamas's unprecedented coordinated attack on Israel on Saturday, October 7, 2023, by firing more than 2,200 rockets and assault on the ground and by air, in which more than 700 Israeli Jews and more than 450 Palestinians lost their lives, has been reported as an intelligence failure by the Jews. Media has attributed the cause as Hamas manually coordinating the attack rather than through electronic transmissions. It also indicates that when Germany, China, and Modi's India attack the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel, or UBI nations, with nuclear weapons, they will coordinate the attack and not leave any nation to make its decision independently. This explanation of what has happened in Israel with Hamas's attack will not make sense to anyone unless one is familiar with Bible prophecy, which the Germans follow very closely. But with understanding of prophecy, the next moves in the events in the Middle East can be predicted, which I will do in this video. There is a very good reason why the Germans follow Bible prophecy. They do not believe that the God of the Bible is the most powerful being in the universe. They believe Satan is equally powerful and they are followers of Satan. They do not hide this fact any longer. Members of God's true church and the American, British, and Jewish people are the people of the God of the Bible, whom they worship. Bible has prophesied about the defeat of the UBI nations at the hands of a German-led alliance as punishment for violation of the laws of the God of the Bible. God of the Bible says he will fight his own people so that they are defeated, but he promises to rescue them after 3.5 years long great tribulation. Germans want to take full advantage of this prophecy. After they defeat the UBI nations, their goal is simply to exterminate them and occupy their lands in perpetuity with Satan's help. That is why they closely follow Bible prophecy. German masqueraders, who are people of German ancestry living in white countries, acknowledge one of their own, Gerald R. Flurry, head of the Philadelphia Church of God, as a prophet and trust his interpretations of Bible prophecy. A pivotal prophecy pertaining to events in the Middle East is given in Daniel 11 verses 40 to 43, which state, "And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships. And he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. He shall enter also into the glorious land," meaning the land of Israel, "and many countries shall be overthrown. But these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom, which is Turkey, and Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon." Now both Moab and Ammon, both peoples live in Jordan. Then continuing, "He shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. But he shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at his steps." The key nations that the king of the north conquers to keep in mind are Egypt, Libya, and Ethiopia, besides the king of the south. Now, he may not have to conquer the Libyans and Ethiopians, but they will be forced into his alliance. That is why it says, "In the Libyans and Ethiopians shall be at his footsteps." They will literally obey whatever he tells them to. We in God's Church received our original understanding of Bible prophecy from Mr. Herbert W. Armstrong, through whom God founded the modern era of his church. Mr. Armstrong passed away on January 16, 1986. Since then, our understanding of prophecy has increased, but also diverged from what Gerald Flurry understands to be the sequence of end time events and what I understand to be the sequence. The reason for the divergence is the message God delivered to me through an angel in October 1998. Mr. Armstrong's interpretation of prophecy in Daniel 11:40 to 43, which Gerald Flurry agrees with, was that attack on the king of the south by the king of the north occurs first, and then the king of the north attacks the UBI nations and conquers them. The message God delivered to me through an angel is that Revelation 8 verses 6 to 12 are describing the attack of the king of the north on the king of the south. In the sequence of end time events, this attack occurs after the UBI nations have already been defeated by the king of the north and are in slavery during the Great Tribulation. The Germans are following Gerald Flurry's interpretation of Daniel 11:40 to 43 because most likely that was also Mr. Armstrong's interpretation. We all agree that the king of the north is a German leader. Gerald Flurry believes Iran is the king of the south. The Bible does not specifically identify the nation of the king of the south. Therefore, I neither agree nor disagree with Gerald Flurry's interpretation of who is the king of the south. I have explained my main differences in understanding of prophecy from what Gerald Flurry understands in my video of September 28, 2023 titled World War Watch Part 2 Prophecies about Germany and China's Moves to Start World War. Gerald Flurry has prophesied for decades that Iran is the prophesied king of the south. It's also well known that Iran is the leading terror sponsoring nation in the world. Gerald Flurry reports a statement by Iran's late Ayatollah Khomeini from an Iranian 11th grade school book, which states, I am decisively announcing to the whole world that if the world devourers wish to stand against our religion, means the Western nations, we will stand against their whole world and will not cease until the annihilation of all of them. Either we all become free or we will go to the greater freedom which is martyrdom. Either we shake one another's hands and joy at the victory of Islam in the world, or all of us will turn to eternal life and martyrdom. In both cases, victory and success are ours. Gerald Flurry states, no words will stop this king of terror. The Iranian leader believes that causing a nuclear cataclysm will hasten the coming of his Messiah. No matter what happens, these religious zealots believe they are winners. No other nuclear power thinks like that. This is the reason Iran wants to start a conflict that would trigger a world war. It believes it will trigger the coming of Islam's Messiah, the 12th Imam. Iran now controls Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon through the Shiite Hezbollah. It also has a strong alliance with Hamas, controls part of Yemen through the Shiite Houthi rebels, and is allied with the Muslim Brotherhood of Egypt, and Bahrain has a significant Shiite population. When the Muslim Brotherhood gained power in Egypt under President Morsi, he immediately restored ties with Iran in 2012. In a report by UN experts in 2020, Iran is suspected of supplying militants fighting the Government of National Accord based in Tripoli in Libya. Iran has been allied with Sudan for decades. Iran supplies weapons to the Sunni Islamic terrorist group Al-Shabaab, which works to overthrow the Somali federal government, expel foreign forces from Somalia, and establish a fundamentalist Islamic State. Since 2014, Al-Shabaab has killed more US citizens than any other Al-Qaeda affiliate. Iran's navy operates in the Red Sea. These interventions of Iran in the Middle East show that it is the head of the terrorism snake in the Middle East. What then is the significance of the Hamas attack on Israeli Jews? The American news networks NBC and ABC have reported that the Hamas militants have been persuaded by Iran to attack Israel. This is also reported by the Wall Street Journal. Iran wants to be the leader of Islam, and it believes taking control of Jerusalem will help it establish that goal. It has likely persuaded Hezbollah to expand the conflict by attacking Israel from the north. Its allies in Syria may also have been persuaded to intervene in the conflict against Israel under the guise of recovering the Golan Heights to Syria. Within hours of the Hamas attack, US President Joe Biden promised rock solid and unwavering support to Israel. It ordered the movement of military ships and aircraft closer to Israel as a show of support. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said on X, "Terrifying news reaches us today from Israel. We are deeply shocked by the rocket fire from Gaza and the escalating violence. Germany condemns these attacks by Hamas and stands by Israel." Gerald Flurry has been interpreting prophecies to say that when Israel faces an existential threat, which it certainly could with the Hamas attack and what Iran might do next, the US government won't act decisively. But Israel has been in discussions with Germany for many years. While the US will likely not act decisively to support Israel, probably because German masqueraders have control of much of the US government, but Germany will act decisively under the guise of helping Israel. Under the guise of helping the Jewish state of Israel, Germany will attack the king of the south, Iran, and its allies, thus fulfilling the prophecy in Daniel 11:40 to 43. It will go on to conquer Egypt, Libya, and Ethiopia, as mentioned in the prophecy, because these nations are allied with Iran right now. The reason for conquering these nations is to basically fulfill prophecy, but more importantly, to fulfill prophecy concerning how it will conquer the UBI nations. In addition, Germany has another goal. As explained in my September 28 video, there is a prophecy regarding Babylon being destroyed by an Eastern alliance. Now, Germany and the masquerader prophets believe that Babylon is the location in the Middle East of the ancient kingdom of Babylon, which is mainly Iraq, parts of Syria, and part of Iran. Thus, when when Germany attacks the king of the south, it will destroy Babylon. Whereas God's church believed that Babylon is the seventh resurrection of the Holy Roman Empire. So, if Germany fulfills the prophecy regarding destroying Babylon, the physical and the nations that are located in the general area of Babylon, then it will fulfill the prophecy of destruction of Babylon, and the interpretation of prophecy that Germany will be destroyed by an Eastern alliance, Germany and Europe will be destroyed by an Eastern alliance, is no longer applicable. Now, since the Jewish state of Israel will also be conquered, Gerald Flurry has been interpreting prophecies that show that the Germany will double cross Israel. It comes as a friend to help Israel, but then goes on to conquer the nation. In his booklet, Hosea, Reaping the Whirlwind, Gerald Flurry writes in chapter 3, "We have seen from Hosea 5 that Judah is mentioned several times in relation to Ephraim and the rest of Israel. Notice verse 13. When Ephraim saw his sickness and Judah saw his wound, then went Ephraim to the Assyrian and sent to King Jareb. Yet could he not heal you, nor cure you of your wound." The Hebrew reveals that both Ephraim, meaning Britain, and Judah go to Assyria, which is Germany. After they conquer the mighty king of the south, the world is going to tremble and the Germans are going to feel invincible. Then Daniel 11:41 says, "He shall enter also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown. But these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab and the chief of the children of Ammon." The powerful European Union army will then enter the glorious land of biblical Judah. The word enter in no way indicates the use of force. The Germans will undoubtedly be invited in to keep the peace. Then the European Union is going to suddenly attack and destroy America, Britain, and Judah at the same time. The friendship between Germany and the biblical nation of Israel is going to lead to one of the biggest double crosses in human history. So, Gerald Fleury has stated for decades that Germany is going to double cross UBI nations which consider it to be their ally. Now, conquest of UBI nations is preceded by an economic siege as prophesied in Ezekiel 5 verse 2, which states, "You shall burn with fire a third part in the midst of the city when the days of the siege are fulfilled. And you shall take a third part and smite about it with a knife, and a third part you shall scatter in the wind, and I will draw out a sword after them." The prophet was talking about his hair being divided into three, which indicates that in one third, how the population of America, British Commonwealth nation, and Israel will be destroyed. Now, in the economic siege of uncertain duration, which could be only for a few months, Germany and its allies will forcibly stop all trade with the UBI nations. That's why conquest of Egypt and Ethiopia is so important, because they can then control all the trade passing through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. Libya is important because it can supply Germany's oil needs if needed. While the economic siege is in force, a deadly civil war will be waged in UBI nations between German masqueraders and their allies against whites of non-German ancestry and their few allies. Only when these nations have been weakened due to the economic siege and the civil war will Germany and its allies attack them directly and conquer them. This is how Gerald Fleury is interpreting prophecies which Germany is trying to fulfill. Iran is trying to fulfill its own Islamic prophecy to trigger a global conflict by persuading Hamas to attack within Israel, which it believes will trigger the intervention of its Messiah, the 12th Imam. Germany is trying to fulfill Bible prophecies as interpreted by the German masquerader prophet Gerald Fleury. Now, what is the significance of Hamas attack within Israel? Iran will likely escalate the conflict by getting Hezbollah and its other proxies to further engage Israel. Whichever way the Hamas attack turns out, there is no doubt in my mind that the time for fulfillment of end of the end time events has arrived. Here are the sure indicators. First, God has a 7,000-year plan for mankind, with the first 6,000 years since Adam's creation allotted to man to govern himself, called man's age. According to calculations by Bible scholars and God's church, the world reached the 6,000 years in September 2019. Now God has already begun the process of taking over kingdoms of the world by fulfilling all end of the end time prophecies without delay. Number two, God often does his work of warning the world in 19-year time cycles. After Mr. Armstrong passed away on January 16, 1986, God's church immediately went off track because Mr. Armstrong's successor, Joseph W. Tkach Sr., turned out to be a German masquerader who immediately began dismantling what God had restored to his church through Mr. Armstrong. God then used Jules DeWace Jr., Gerald Fleury, and David Pack, head of the Restored Church of God, to warn the church to get back on track, or the members will lose their one and only chance for eternal life. Their work was completed after 19 years by January 2005, though they still continue to preach. Then the world entered the time of no longer any delay in fulfillment of end of the end time events as prophesied in Revelation 10 verse 6 and the messages of the seven seals. Then most astonishingly, I, a lay member, was signaled to by ministers in God's church to start preaching God's message to the world around January 2005. The message I was to preach is prophesied in Revelation 10, verse 11. And he said to me, You must prophesy again about many peoples and nations and tongues, meaning in many languages and kings. Only God could have fulfilled this prophecy by having his warning message preached in every language of the world. It took me some time to get organized, but on December 2nd, 2006, I delivered my first message, which I read in English. I deliver my weekly messages in English every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. USA Eastern Standard Time, which are then broadcast by God's angels to every human being on earth in his or her own language. Whoever wants to hear them just has to tune his ear to hear and will hear them. In January 2014, I will complete 19 years since I was commissioned to preach. After January 2024, there is no constraint from God for Germany to start the Third World War, which is pictured by the first four seals of the book of Revelation. Number 3. The Apostle John prophesied in 1 John 2 verse 18, Little children, it is the last hour, and as you have heard that the Antichrist is coming, even now many Antichrists have come, by which we know that it is the last hour. God's church knows that the man who succeeded Mr. Herbert W. Armstrong in the Worldwide Church of God after his death on January 16, 1986, Joseph W. Tkach Sr. was the Antichrist because he was a German masquerader who were worshippers of Satan, hence Antichrist or against Christ. His son and others who succeeded Tkach Sr. after his death are all Antichrists. In fact, these Antichrists have taken over all Church of God organizations such as the United Church of God, a worldwide association, Living Church of God, Philadelphia Church of God, Restored Church of God International, Grace Communion International, which is the new name for the Worldwide Church of God started by Mr. Armstrong, and almost all other small one pastor churches that came out of the Worldwide Church of God. Therefore, there are already many antichrists. That is how we know this is the last hour. An hour is a specific time of prophecy. 124-hour day is 1,000 years in prophecy, as stated in 2 Peter chapter 3 verse 8, which states, But beloved, do not forget this one thing, that with the Lord 1 day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is 1 day. If 1 day of 24 hours is the equivalent of 1,000 years in prophecy, then 1 hour equals 1,000 divided by 24, or 41.67 years, or 41 years and 8 months. If we allow 3.5 years for the Great Tribulation, then the end of warning the world when it entered the last hour is 38 years and 2 months. God's church believes that the Philadelphia era of God's church ended on the day Mr. Armstrong passed away on January 16, 1986, because the Antichrist, Joseph Tkach Sr., came immediately as successor of Mr. Armstrong. 38 years and 2 months brings us to March 2024. Germany's goal probably is to trigger a conflict or respond to a conflict such as the Hamas attack that will trigger their attack on the King of the South immediately. Then they will lay an economic siege of the UBI nations for a few months, while a civil war in UBI nations will also erupt. Then they will attack and conquer the UBI nations in a 30-day war, as prophesied in Hosea 5 verse 7. They have dealt treacherously against the Lord, for they have begotten strange children. Now shall a month, meaning 30 days, devour them with their portions. That, according to their interpretation, is the reason for difference of 2 months between January 2024 and March 2024, or whenever the 2-month difference occurs. Since the Germans are free moral agents, God has left the decision in their hands regarding when to start the Third World War. And the fourth indicator that the Third World War could start any time is the four horsemen of the Apocalypse prophecy, or the first four seals of Revelation 6, which is about the Third World War. It pictures riders on a white horse, which is a person depicting false religion, a red horse of the actual war, a black horse rider depicting famine, following in the wake of the war, and a rider on the pale horse depicting disease. The riders of the four horses ride in a sequence. The rider on the white horse has already completed his full gallop. False religion had already conquered the world and mainstream Christianity and all other religions of the world. To complete his gallop, he had to conquer only God's church. That task was completed on April 19, 2019, when all leaders of all Church of God organizations committed to the German side by participating in the murder of a member of God's church. Now the rider on the red horse can go into full gallop, which is the Third World War itself. Thus, all these four signs indicate that Germany is now free to start the Third World War anytime. That, I believe, is the real significance of Hamas's attack on the Jews in Israel. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please continue to watch my videos on important world events, World War III watch, politics, international business, how Bible prophecy is playing an important role in world affairs, advice on health and medical problems, and much more for in-depth and insightful analysis. Please also subscribe to my YouTube and Facebook channels Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini to view and get information on the latest videos.